Thank you very much, Mr. Jimenez, and I'm very pleased to be here this afternoon with Minister Heed and with Superintendent Gaumont to talk about this issue. I'm an emergency physician at Vancouver General Hospital. I often see the consequences of drinking and driving, and I will tell you a story about one of the many cases that I've seen. This is about 3 friends that were traveling home in a small car after going to a meeting. They were waiting at a stoplight. They were then rear-ended by a large sedan. Driver of the larger car made no attempt to slow down before hitting the smaller car. The force of the impact was so great that the backseat passenger was actually torn out of his seatbelt, ejected through the back window of the car, and landed on the road. When the paramedics arrived, there was no signs of life, and they were unable to resuscitate the patient. And the driver of the larger car had a blood alcohol sample when that was tested over twice the legal limit for driving. And when I spoke to him, he said he had no recollection of even being in a car crash. The case is obviously tragic, but is it unusual? Unfortunately, the answer to that is no. Every year, more than 100 people are killed in drunk driving crashes. On average, every 3 days, there's a crash like the one I described. And every 3 days in BC, grieving family members are told that their husband or wife or son or daughter has been killed in an impaired driving crash. It's my job to tell the families this news. I never do this on the telephone. What we do is we have somebody call them, tell them they must come to the emergency right away. Do not drive, have somebody drive them down, and then they basically are taken into a room, and I explain to them what has happened. This is the toughest thing that I do. The scenario happens over and over again, and why is that? It's because people continue to drink and drive. So in June of 2008, just over a year ago, a random survey of drivers was conducted between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. at pre-selected locations in Vancouver and Saanich. Drivers were stopped and they were asked to blow into a breathalyzer. And nearly 3% of the drivers that were tested actually had a blood alcohol level that was above the legal limit for driving. So that's 1 in every 37 cars that went through was driven by a drunk driver. Just like to ask you to do something. So many of you are parents. Some of you have children that are hockey players. We're standing right outside of a hockey rink, and so if you're driving them, you'd be driving them to either practices that are very early in the morning or very late at night, because that's the only time when anyone can get ice time. And so you'll be on the road at exactly the same time that survey will be done. I'd like to ask you to count the cars. By the time you get up to 37, you'll have passed a drunk driver. That drivers that have a blood alcohol content that are greater than the legal limit for driving are 50 times, that's 50 times more likely to cause a crash, causing someone to die than a sober driver. Crash just like the one that I described. So the potential for tragedy is huge, and those tragedies keep occurring. So what I'd ask you to do is please do not drink and drive. Please plan how you're going to get home before you go to your party and before you have your first drink. Anyway, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Dr. Purssell. I think the fact that we're still here doing this again this year suggests that many British Columbians are in denial about drinking and driving. Many people think they're okay to drink and drive, but the fact of the matter is your judgment is seriously impaired even after one drink, which is...
I think they want to...
All right, here.